Now may I request a guest of honor, today's Honorable Minister Mohibul H. Chowdhury, Honorable Deputy Minister, Minister of Education, Government of Bangladesh. Mr. Chowdhury ji graduated from London School of Economics with Law and Anthropology degree and was called as a barrister of Lincoln's Inn. Following the post-graduation from University of Law, Mr. Chowdhury was partner of the legal circle and an advocate of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh before his ministerial appointment. With this, may I call upon Mr. Mohibul H. Chowdhury, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister of Education, Government of Bangladesh, for his address.
Thank you. First of all, let me uh, uh, thank all the organizers here today for inviting me at this discussion. I was listening very carefully and attentively to our Honorable Minister from Delhi, and you have rightly mentioned this that Delhi has now become a model to the world, and the experience of Delhi can be replicated across the region, and we have so much to learn from it because we all have almost similar type of challenges in our education system. Both Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, all our regional countries, we had same sort of educational sort of framework, and we have when we began, we had renowned institutions, we had a good private sector education model working very well, but the challenge is but the main focus and challenge was obviously making sure that the majority of the people had good access, good education, and that was contributing in skills development in our uh, you know uh, uh, society as a whole. So both India and Bangladesh, we had good institutions, but the problem remains with the public access, and also as our honorable minister previously said, infrastructure and the quality, etc., and for the majority people. So that's where Delhi government has worked, and that is what our current government in Bangladesh is working on. So our honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, since she took over in 2009, um, she had to continuously invest in infrastructure and also the curriculum. So we instead of sort of focusing on general education, we felt that it was important to invest and also focus on technical and vocational education, because education, if it is taught uh, in isolation from skill development, or in isolation from vocation, where most educated citizenry is obviously aiming towards, then it really loses its meaning. So the challenge that we faced here is that we had a very big general education sector, and the sector was doing as you know, like all the other neighboring countries, but it wasn't meeting the requirement of our growing industrial sector. So in terms of meeting, as you have seen, Bangladesh have been going through a rapid industrialization over the last decade since this government has taken over. So what has been happening is that there is an acute skills shortage in the industry and also in terms of our service sector. So that's what we actually started focusing on, because what we have realized is that there's no point in having prestigious institutions, in having renowned world ranked universities, if you cannot provide a good supply of skilled school leavers to the economy. Because I mean, if you look at the experience of United Kingdom, for example, where I have spent most of my formative years, it wasn't Oxford or Cambridge or LSE or UCL or Imperial College that has created their human resource in their country. It was actually their polytechnical. It was actually their vocational education system that they had built to meet the need of society and industry. So that's where we focus, because this was also the vision of our founding father, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. When he began, he wanted to focus on skills-based education rather than general education. But unfortunately, after losing him in 1975, a lot of emphasis was given on populist education, where we liberalized the higher education sector to the extent that we have hundreds and thousands of highly educated graduates, but they are essentially without any skill for the industry, and also for the when it comes to the need of the economy. So skills-based education is something that we are trying to focus on, and in fact, we have actually the country's biggest public-private partnership in education, where we are no longer expanding government school system across the country. Instead, we are partnering with all non-government schools, where government is taking over part of the maintenance of those institutions, subject to them meeting certain conditions such as pass rate, enrollment, and gender balance, etc., criteria. So the government has this scheme called monthly payment order system, where we are taking over payment for the teachers in these non-government institutions, and also paying for the clerical staff and building infrastructure. But the management of these institutions remains solely with the institution, with some regulatory supervision of the institution, since they are receiving public funds. So instead of taking over a particular institution or many institutions across the country and bringing them directly under government coffer, our model is to work with the local schools and give them the infrastructure support, give them financial support, rather than taking over them entirely. Because you see, we have about 50,000 educational institutions across the country in the secondary education level. But our government number of 100% government schools are only about 700. So you can see that there is a huge difference. And even in those 700 institutions, what we have seen is that yes, they are of very good quality. There's a lot of demand for this, government schools. We have about 70,000 seats in these government schools, but we are getting about 7 lakh applications for these government schools. So we have just computerized it, made it very lottery based. Whoever gets it, and we are running the government schools. But they are not; they are literally insignificant when it comes to the secondary and higher education family, because 700 schools is nothing, for a country of 170 million people. So these 50,000 schools that we are partnering with the running schools, where instead of taking them over and bringing them directly under government payroll, we are telling them that you must work hard to make sure that the students are passing, and at least the pass rate must be 85% in the public exam. You have to make sure that there is enough students, and you have to make sure that the land belongs to you, and the school's financial management is at least of a certain standard, and all the teachers are registered certified teachers. So we have a body called National Teachers Registration Certification Authority, NTRCA. All the teachers that are recruited in secondary schools, in non-government schools, which are not government schools by the way, must have registration with the NTRCA authority, so that there is some uniformity in terms of teacher standards. And then we have their records in our centralized database, and we can run teachers training from there. But we are way away from that uniformity across the country in terms of teachers standard. These are challenges that remain, but we are more or less only working on the PPP model, where we partner with the institution, management remains with the institution, but regulatory supervision comes from the top, because they are receiving public fund to run part of their service. Now we are trying to bring in vocational and technical education in these schools, so that the school leavers do not have to think of going into or transition into higher education. You see, the problem with India, Bangladesh, and all the other neighboring countries is that we have a lot of students ending up in higher education. I mean, you could say that it sounds a bit elitist, but it's not really, because uh, the nature of our economy are not such that they can absorb huge number of graduate population. Even in the United States, they cannot absorb huge number of graduates in their economy. So why do we need so many graduates? We need graduates for a certain industry, for example, service industry, or industries which require particular set of clinical skills, for example, like medicine or engineering and etc. But the economy as a whole has a certain need, and these needs are not going to be met by producing huge number of graduates. So we need good school leavers who would go to vocational related training centers, who would get diplomas instead of degrees, and then who would be employed in the economy based on the need of the economy. So there is absolutely no point in having thousands of graduates. But we had been doing that because it's populist. We had liberalized our higher education to the extent that anyone can be a graduate now, and it costs very little in Bangladesh to be a graduate, by the way. Our government universities are heavily subsidized, including our engineering university, our topmost university, which is Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, BUET. It costs me about 10 taka to study there. The lodging is free, the food is free, and the tuition is free. Everything is free. So you can imagine how much subsidy we have to give in our higher education. But what is happening is that graduates from these top universities, after receiving huge amount of government subsidies, are actually going to abroad and serving other countries. So I mean, it's basically poor people of Bangladesh or people of Bangladesh are subsidizing for the workforce of Google or Silicon Valley. So which doesn't really meet our demand, in that way. So we are trying to rethink about our higher education system. There is no point in having a heavily subsidized higher education system where it does not meet our industrial or economic demand. We need to focus on vocation related trainings, and we're trying to convert our colleges, which are loosely connected with universities, with administrative universities, and convert them into skills-based training centers. That's a huge challenge because, as you know, in the academia, there's a lot of conventional thinking, and with that type of conventional thinking in higher academia, we are really struggling to convert them into technical vocational further education colleges or skill-based training centers, because our conventional academics do not want to think beyond how universities are run. Even the universities have to be converted into short course providers, skills providers. Because what I had seen in the UK, it wasn't University of Oxford that created the large number of human resource base in the UK. It was basically a polytechnical institute, which has now been called a university because through a law of parliament they changed everything into university. But effectively, it was these institutions which were producing skilled manpower which were used in their economy rather than full on graduates. So vocational qualification is the go forward, is the way forward for our developing countries, and this has been seen in European countries as well, in China, in Southeast Asia. And I think we can have a regional framework for vocation related training and vocation related education, which we can then implement to our higher education institutions. Because the higher education institutions, in considering the number of them, it is absolutely nonsensical to have this huge amount of higher education institutions where government subsidy goes to. So this is our case, by the way. I don't think it is the case in India, because in India you have to pay in even government institutions if it is technical education or engineering education. I think it is fees based, but here it's not fees based, so we are trying to move away from that. With this, I would like to conclude my remark here today, and I was very privileged to have been invited in this discussion. So thank you very much. I look forward to work with you in the future, and I agree with this statement earlier made that development is what we need to focus. In this subcontinent, we have focused so much on party politics, elections, and petty divisions, that politics has really lost its meaning. It has become more of a power-based activity rather than policy-based activity. So the ultimate objective is to achieve maximum welfare of the people, and therefore politics meaning should be just that we make good policies and make sure that our people are receiving the benefit of these good policies. Thank you very much.